am currently reading the last of my chosen 10 reads before the end. And being honest, though they are all books I have enjoyed, I do sort of wish I had not done it. Because in the last few weeks, I have received so many incredible novels in the post, including Brimstone, which I really want to read, The Mysterious Affair of Judith Potts, which is the 5th book in the Marlowe Murder Club series. And I cannot wait to actually open that and find out what happens after the cliffhanger from the murder on the Marlowe Bell. And Esther Is Now Following You, which looks intriguing. Every single one of these is a book I cannot wait to read. I also have The Last Starborn Seer by Venetia Constantine on my list, and I need to read that before the second week of next year. This is actually my last book review episode of 2025 because though I am trying hard not to see it, the year is almost over. And that means my list of favourites, some of which I have not actually reviewed in detail on the show, is coming incredibly soon. In fact, it will be out on the 30th of December. Anyway, less of that. Let's get on with the chunky review for the fortnight. This week, I am taking a journey to the highlands of Scotland, where leaders battle for control, women are bartered for power and wealth, and wolves are the enemy. No, I'm not talking about real wolves, but shapeshifters in Lauren Palphreyman's The Wolf King. I'm Ray, an unapologetic bookworm, introvert, self-confessed hermit, and long-term depression sufferer. This is my quiet space to share thoughts as I make my way through an ever-growing to-be-read pile. Join me as I explore stories one book at a time with 100% honest and completely spoiler-free reviews. Welcome to my world, and enjoy your stay. When a princess is kidnapped by an alpha, war rages between the humans and the wolves, but soon forbidden attraction starts to grow. Princess Aurora longs to escape the castle and the marriage that has been arranged for her, but on the night before her wedding, at a dogfight where captured werewolves are made to fight for sport, she spares the life of a young wolf. It puts her on the radar of the most powerful alpha who was going to kill him, and it changes everything. That night, when the alpha escapes, he kidnaps her and takes her to the rugged lands north of the border, where the once warring werewolf clans are beginning to unite. He thinks that she is the key to winning the war against the humans. Only as they spend time around one another, forbidden attraction starts to grow, and as Aurora learns that not all wolves are bad, the alpha discovers that she is in danger from both his enemies and those he once considered friends. With monsters on both sides, a bloodthirsty war between humans and wolves raging, and undeniable passion growing between them, will their story end in love or tragedy? And will Aurora ever get home? Does she even want to? As with the last few episodes, I am going to keep most of the talk about the plot, characters, experiences, and some of the underlying themes in the book in more detail in my personal review. And I am still going to maintain my no spoilers please, I'm British attitude, so I don't ruin everything for you. Betrothed to the cruel and equally unpleasant Lord Sebastian, Aurora arrives at his strongholding in the Northlands with her father, aware that she is being bartered, an exchange of power and support that the King of the Southlands desires is all that his only daughter is worth to him. However, Aurora is not the meek young woman she pretends to be. Tempered by the torture she has endured since she was a young child, suffering at the hands of her father and his courtiers, she puts on a facade. As a child, she learned quickly that love was conditional and obedience was enforced through pain. Her father's court was one where punishment was public, where courtiers watched without intervening, and where Aurora was disciplined not to correct her behaviour, but to break her spirit. The scars of that upbringing follow her north, shaping how she reads danger and how quickly she recognizes cruelty disguised as authority. Whispers follow Aurora into the wolf territories, especially rumours about her mother. The Southern Queen died under suspicious circumstances, and within the Wolf King's court, questions surface about whether she was truly weak or deliberately silenced. Theories around her death are raised in Aurora's presence, awakening something in her, an uncertainty regarding her mother's demise and the possible hand her father had in it. Before ever reaching the wolves, Aurora has already survived the man her father intended her to marry. Sebastian is a Borderlands lord whose cruelty is not subtle, but celebrated. In his presence, Aurora is treated as property rather than a future wife. He humiliates her, invades her personal space, and delights in reminding her that once married, she will have no voice and no protection. It's all rules are off the table. His violence is calculated, his entitlement is absolute. Aurora understands clearly that marriage to him will be a slow death that her father has approved of and will be witnessed by people who will do nothing to save her should things come to a head. That knowledge is what sharpens her rebellion. When she defies Sebastian and later intervenes in a wolf fight between Callum and a younger wolf, she is not acting out of naivety, but out of refusal to accept the role that has been determined is hers. Saving this wolf is her first open rejection of the system that she has been a part of since she was a child, and it places her directly in the line of sight of wolf politics. Potentially, it's out of the frying pan and into the fire. She has no idea the games she is playing or the position she has put herself in. Within the Wolf King's court, Aurora recognizes the same patterns that she grew up with. This kingdom is no different than her own. Unfortunately, they're also wolves, so a mere slap round the face would be enough to kill. Power is asserted publicly. Fear is currency and rumours are weapons. Wolves watch her closely, testing her to see how she reacts and see where her weaknesses lie. Many resent her for being human, while others resent her for her closeness to Callum, her kidnapper. Many believe she is hiding something, just as her mother did, though they are no closer to discovering what that may be. The court speculates endlessly about what kind of woman can endure or does endure the cruelty of a southern king and survives it. James, the Wolf King, and Callum's brother encourages this behaviour. He questions Aurora openly, probes her about her history, and assesses her like he would a weapon. He understands trauma and knows how it can be used. To him, Aurora is proof of her father's brutality and an opportunity to exploit it. He sees her as a tool to be manipulated. His interest in her is never safe and never accidental. Every offer he makes to her of protection comes with a cost, and Aurora knows from experience that accepting his offer will lead to something far worse. Of course, Callum's presence complicates everything. As James's brother, his protection is enough to keep Aurora safe, but also marks her as someone that could be used for political gain. Some wolves believe that she is manipulating him, while others believe she is weakening him. Every look that they exchange is watched. They are under constant observation. Callum's refusal to dominate Aurora, to treat her as a possession, is seen as dangerous and a sign that he is weaker because of her, which makes her a tool that can be used to someone else's benefit. Of course, there is Blake, who is a mystery all his own making. He understands court intrigue. He grew up in the Southern Court. He knows about Aurora's father. He understands the situation she was in with Sebastian and knows about everything that Aurora went through in the court, which makes him both a danger to her and her position in the Northlands, but also someone who she could potentially confide in because he knows what she went through. But it's never really revealed why he knows this. Where Callum offers protection through loyalty, Blake offers her a chance at survival by making her aware of not only her power, but also the position she holds within the court, both the Southern Court with her father and the Northlands with James and Callum. It's never really clear what his interest in her is until the end, but we're not going to spoil that. For Aurora, the Wolf King's Court is not simply another place of danger. It exactly mirrors the place that she escaped from. And it's almost as though she jumped out of one pot of boiling water into another one rather than into the ice water that would soothe her. Every smile, every kindness is a potential trap for her. She's watching though, she's learning, she's picking up things, and she chooses when she is going to fight her own battles. Of course, there is so much I could say, but I did promise no spoilers, so I am going to stop before the massive and surprising twist is revealed. If I told you that, then I would completely ruin the book for you, and I don't think that is actually fair. And it's time for the oft repeated portion of the episode, the being bookish disclaimer. I am not telling you about any of these books to influence you into reading something you have no interest in. I know that not every book is for everyone, and that's fine, because if we all read the same thing, then there would only be a few genres and zero growth would ever be made. Can you imagine if everybody only read thrillers? There would be no romantasy, there'd be no science fiction, there'd be no anything but thrillers, and I'd be stuck because I don't read them. Think of all the books, seriously, that we'd miss out on. That would be horrific. Anyway, less of that. Let's see what others thought about The Wolf King by Lauren Palphreyman, because I like providing that balance. And this is all before I get to my own feelings on the book. Ali was less than impressed with the book, feeling that it was let down by the overused love triangle trope. She gave the book 1 star and said, "Maybe it's the aftermath of my overdosing Wattpad werewolf teen phase. No regrets, those days were a blast. But now I'm yearning for something with a touch more elegance. To my surprise, this book was written by the same author of Cupid's Match, which ultimately is one of my favourite Wattpad stories from back then. Unfortunately, this one didn't quite capture the same magic I was hoping for, and nostalgia just wasn't enough to save it. I definitely appreciate the short chapters from the book, which should make for a breezy read, but instead they stretch the story thin, spinning in place without progression. Multiple chapters pass, yet the plot remains static, looping the same uneventful moment without momentum. The narration meanders, and my interest waned with every digression. Now that I'm looking back, I've noticed Palphreyman has a habit of shoehorning love triangles into her work, a trope I have outgrown as maturity has shown me how rarely it's done well. Most of the time it's just hollow drama for drama's sake, and sadly this book is no exception. Neither of the love interests stand out to me. Callum is a blandly chivalrous, while Blake's constant smirking and faux mystery make him more grating than intriguing. Their dynamic isn't a conflict, it's a filler, stretching a flimsy plot across future installments. And so, it's genuinely disappointing how this novel squanders its promising beginning. The moment Aurora enters the Wolf Kingdom, the story loses all pace. We're subject to endless cycles of the same internal monologues, with key motivations rehashed in nearly identical wording, chapter after chapter. The dialogue serves only as exposition, and the chapters lack satisfying arcs, often ending abruptly. A teenage me who once gobbled up anything on the Orange app might have devoured this. Now, the author's writing feels frozen in time, unchallenged, unrefined, and painfully surface level. There's no richness to the world, no complexity to the characters, just a void shell of a story that leaves me wondering why I bothered. A disappointing execution of what could have been a compelling premise. I love reading reviews, I have to be completely honest. There's something somewhat amusing about reading through the views of other people. Do some of them make me a little frustrated? Occasionally, but often because they make me realise something about a niggling plot point or a character who annoyed me. But at the same time, there's nothing that better highlights how different readers are when it comes to their perception of a book. Reviews really show how subjective a book truly is. One person can read something and love everything from the characters to the endgame romantic pairing, while someone else will be rooting dearly for the character who ends up dead in chapter 36. If you know, you know. The overall rating for The Wolf King is actually rather different across platforms. Storygraph and Goodreads, both of which are normally relatively similar, really surprised me, as this is truly not something I have come across very often. On Goodreads, The Wolf King has a 4.14, and on Storygraph, it has an overall rating of 4.0. The Wolf King is another romantasy that was originally self-published and released in September 2023. However, its popularity proved too tempting, and this year it was released by Wayward with a great deal of fanfare. And here's where things get kind of interesting. Though the sequel, The Night Prince, is due to be released by Wayward in hardback, several special editions are also being released next February. A week before my birthday, the Kindle version is still available to purchase on Amazon, or at least it was the last time I checked yesterday morning. That, to me at least, seems a tad financially counterproductive. But as someone who doesn't read many Kindle books due to eye strain, it's not something I have been tempted to buy in place of the physical version, despite really wanting to find out what happens next. Right now, the book has 110,627 ratings and 12,383 full reviews on Goodreads, and on Storygraph it has 9,373 reviews, which, when you consider it's been available for over 2 years, isn't that many given how popular it appears to have been on socials. I can't help wondering why it hasn't got more, especially when I look at other books that have done a very, very similar transition from independent to traditional publishing. SK couldn't hide her enthusiasm for the book. Her 5-star review is effusive from start to finish. She said, "Oh my God, I found my new obsession. This is everything I wanted in a book and more. I didn't want to stop reading and didn't want the book to end. The perfect sort of book to get one out of a slump and give the cozy, warm, paranormal vibes, just more intense. It's got a good world building. The pacing is fast and straight to the point. There's not much filler in it, and I absolutely loved it. Because not all books need to be 500 plus pages thick. This was just under and got everything done beautifully. The political intrigue between the wolves and humans was so interesting to me, and oh my God, the drama. The characters are pretty likeable and complex. I loved Aurora as the female main character. She's got fire in her and strong with her opinions, and yet there was an innocence about her which I appreciated. Callum is so easy to like. He's the kind of guy, or rather wolf, you cuddle, who's warm and straightforward. He's simplistic in his ideals, and I loved that about him. His possessiveness and protective side was endearing. Blake, on the other hand, is more cunning, subtle. I loved his manipulative and dark self. Basically, he's like Rhysand from Akatar, not Akamath, just to be clear. The chemistry is so good between them. The dynamics just work perfectly. The romance between Callum and Aurora is sweet, hot, and swoon-worthy. They had me blushing, giggling, and kicking my feet. But I want to see some Blake in the mix, because I know that man is going to shake my world if I do get his scenes in a more romantic or spicy fashion. The ending had me shook. I couldn't put the book down at all. Some of the things were a bit predictable, I won't lie, but at the same time, I ate it all up. The action and twists were so good, I can't wait to read the next book. Basically, go read it if you're in the mood for some werewolves. It won't disappoint. These two views could not be more different. With one reader loving the elements, the other decided were the reasons not to read the book at all. However, it seems it was ever thus when it comes to books, especially in this genre. Right, now that I've mentioned what others are saying, here's what I really think about The Wolf King by Lauren Palphreyman. No spoilers, just 100% honesty. Did I like the book? And I'm going to say it, I have to be honest, I missed out on the special editions as the fanfare that accompanied the book was like a brush fire, abrupt and effective, though in a positive way rather than the damaging one that a brush fire is. Yeah, okay. I have to think of another metaphor because that one is a little bit too dark. Anyway, the book release and the publicity that accompanied it coincided with the period where I was cancelling pre-orders rather than buying books due to that wonderful job loss situation back in September. Please, I'm begging here, let next year be better. As soon as I got a new job, the first thing I did was look and see if I could reorder the special editions I had cancelled. Hint, I could not. And then I saw all this news about The Wolf King, remembered how much I had enjoyed Diebound, and figured there was no harm in giving it a try. So I bought myself a normal edition, see previous note about missing the special one, which appears leapt off the shelves all on its own. And when it arrived, left it on the dining table for a couple of days while I finished another book. Then came the weekend. I had a busy day. I was podcasting, chatting with family, cleaning my studio, setting up my office to start my new job just a few days later. And then I sat down with a book. This book. I devoured it in around 5 hours. I was immediately enthralled. The setting took me back to a number of my favourite novels by Julie Garwood. I know that I've mentioned her before, especially her character Brodick in Ransom, which remains close to the top of my must-read list. Here was this brooding, possessive, protective Highland male who I could just imagine gruffly telling me that he loved me and didn't want anything to happen to me. And in The Wolf King, he was also a werewolf. Where do I sign up to visit this castle? At a time when there isn't a power struggle going on, though, because, yeah, that's not my thing. I honestly did not expect to enjoy the book as much as I did. When I put it down, I immediately checked to find out more about the series, wanting to know when the next book was coming out, and secretly hoping it wasn't going to be too far into the future, because I really enjoyed reading about Callum and Aurora. And then, of course, there's Blake. Aurora is an interesting character. I have grown accustomed in the last few years at least to reading about strong and rebellious female characters who have been placed in untenable situations, and Aurora is no different. A princess being essentially sold off to an unscrupulous and barbaric man by her own father. Lord Sebastian is a cruel and immoral pig. There's no other way to describe him. Well, actually, there are, but this is a family-friendly-ish episode, as the rest of the podcast is, and I am not going to curse. He cares about no one and nothing except for power. I kept on waiting for him to get his comeuppance because he deserved nothing less than a dirk through his cold heart, though they would probably struggle to find it. The way he spoke to Aurora sadly mirrored the way her own father treated her, Yet this behaviour towards her didn't appear to have affected her own character in any negative ways. As we see quite soon, to be fair, after Lord Sebastian tells her that he is going to happily use and abuse her for his own and his men's amusement. He truly made me feel sick to my stomach. No joke. One of the lines that he said actually made my stomach churn. Callum is an interesting character because when we first meet him, it's easy to assume that he is black-hearted, ruthless, uncaring, brutal, and bloodthirsty. It's soon revealed that that is quite far from the case. He is a gruff man hardened by the circumstances of his life, but he still cares for others. And sometimes it seems as though he cares for them far more than he cares for his own safety. He was captured in order to save the life of a young wolf who had followed his own heart and other parts into danger. As much as I like Callum, though, he is strangely too nice. And yeah, that sounds really weird, doesn't it? And when you pit him against the darker and definitely more mysterious Blake, he, for me, at least, is found a little wanting. I don't know why. I just love a bad boy. I blame it solely on my youth and 80s movies in general. While emotionally mature Ray knows that a bad boy is not a good risk, emotional reader Ray loves a guy who has depth, mystery, is more than a little bit rough around the edges, and has the potential to do just a little bit of damage. Yes, as a reader, I am a tad twisted. God, that sounds so awful. However, I know I am not alone in this. The debate online is, at least where the Wolf King is concerned, are you Team Callum or Team Blake? Does this take anyone else back to the early 2000s and Team Edward and Team Jacob? Not that I was actually either of those at any point in my life. I think the sequel may answer a lot of questions we have about both of these men and the choices that Aurora has to make. But until then, speculation and debate is rife. Of course, I say here, Aurora's choice, and that is something I personally really liked about the book. It is made very clear that while both of these men are competing for her affections, and some, namely Blake, aren't above a little bit of manipulation, ultimately the choice is hers to make. This is something that romantasy and fantasy novels seems to be getting so much better at. We have the why choose elements in novels like Warrior Princess Assassin, and the choose but you're in control elements in novels like this one and Shield of Sparrows. Of course, there will always be a few that are pitching from left field, like Direbound, but even then, the woman is still in control of who gets her affection and how she gives it to them. There are a number of themes in The Wolf King that thread through the novel, and I have to be honest, the one that has the most importance for me is society and position. I'm a big fan of things, Regency novels, Pride and Prejudice and things like that. And that is a core theme in all of those books. Like many novels based during a time of rebellion, social position is a powerful tool that is used to control the people and change the narrative depending on who is listening. Aurora may be a princess, but as a daughter, her position in society is less than that of any man. She is a bargaining chip to be used by the men in her life in order to ensure they get what they want. To her father, she is only useful because she is pretty and has a title that can be exchanged for political influence and support. To the man who is going to marry her, she is a connection to the throne. I did keep on waiting, not only for Lord Sebastian to get his comeuppance, but also to reveal he was going to head up a coup to get the crown. To Callum, she is a way to get the stone needed to free his people, though this changes when he realises she is not something to play with. To James, his brother, she becomes a tool of vengeance. This is a very archaic way of looking at women. However, the book gives off this tone of being based during the 11th or 12th century, and the belief that women were chattel was very much the thing, in that particular time period. To Palphreyman's credit, she gives our leading lady a very strong and loud voice, and Aurora uses it well. She is not going to bow down to the men who believe they own her. She is not less than they are, and she proves it multiple times. Ultimately, for me, The Wolf King was an enjoyable read, and I would really like to revisit it. In fact, I probably will do, though likely just before I read The Night Prince, which is the sequel. This book melded together two of my all-time favourite things, Scottish Highland warriors and fantasy, and part of me really hopes that this was actually Lauren Palphreyman's intention from the start. If you enjoyed The Wolf King or want to read something similar, try these. I'm going to go incredibly off-piste here, and you may find that weird, or you may notice that I have been leaving Easter eggs about this particular off-piste moment since the very start of this episode. If you loved The Wolf King, then I am going to steer you in the direction of some of my old faithfuls, in the form of Highland historical romances. But why? Seriously, I hear you ask, and I am going to answer you. It's quite simple, really. Callum and Blake remind me greatly of the Highland warriors who made up the majority of my favourite reads by Julie Garwood and Joanna Lindsay, both of whom are now sadly gone. Garwood actually passed away, I believe, this year, and Joanna Lindsay passed away in 2019. But their books remain on my shelves, and I am proud to display them all. Julie Garwood actually wrote 2 series that focused on strong Highland men. The Secret and Ransom are my favourites, with Ian and Brodick forever holding a small piece of my heart in their strong hands. Garwood was one of many romance authors who tried her hand at writing romantic thrillers, and though neither of these or other books that I'm going to mention are that, they do have a mystery, murderous plots, and intrigue at their core. They weren't exactly the most complex of plots, but the stories had something, and her Highland men, well, they were something else entirely. She also wrote another series, The Bride and the Wedding. Again, both were set in the Highlands in around the 11th or 12th century. Jamie and Connor were the heroes, reluctantly travelling to England to marry on the orders of their king, a way to arrange a peace treaty of sorts, or at least bond these two warring families in some way or other. They both of these books have humour, murder, political rebellion, and so much more. And I honestly do think that they are really good reads, especially if you loved The Wolf King. Perhaps at some point I should do a review of these particular books, because I do think that they are worth talking about, and I greatly enjoyed reading them. Of course, if you aren't interested in reading historical romance, then I do have a few fantasy and romantasy recommendations that I think you might enjoy. Direbound by Sable Sorensen, again published by Wayward. It goes without saying, this one has direwolves, political plots, magical bonds, love triangles, and vampires. It has the full kit and caboodle. The Crowns of Nyaxia series by Carissa Broadbent, which starts with The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This series is a great combination of vampires, mortals, and a power struggle across multiple kingdoms. The book series is currently 4 books and 2 novellas, with the 5th book now coming out in, I believe it is coming out in August. It was originally coming out in July. And then I received an email from Waterstones this morning with the dreaded, "We have some news about your order," as the subject line. And every time I get one of those, my stomach sinks just a little bit. The next one is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I do still have a few books left to read in this series, but I love the dynamics between the characters, the battles they are fighting to save themselves, and their kingdom, and the fact that the bond between Poppy and Cass is growing in such a way. I love their relationship. I have no doubt that there are more books I could recommend. I can think of about 20 right at this moment, but this list could be very, very long. The list of great fantasy is almost endless, and more books are released almost every single month. I think this month is the only one that I haven't had a book delivery. I haven't had a pre-order. I think every other month this year I've had at least one book. If you've got a book that you feel I've missed out or I should have added that matches this particular novel tonally, then please do let me know, because I love hearing from people. And it's always great to find out what other people think is a really good read. I'm not sure, seriously, how it's happened, but last week I celebrated a whole month in my new job. The time just flies when you're having fun and when you're incredibly busy. Last week, we also had a massive Christmas party held at a stunning 5-star hotel in London. And seriously, arriving there and having a suited and booted doorman open the taxi door for me. And then when I left, having a different suited and booted doorman whistle for a taxi to get me back to the station was incredible. And the guest list read like an awards show. No, I don't work for the press or in any kind of media industry, but still it was an experience I have never had before, and it was amazing. Even if it did mean I was on a very crowded train back from London at nearly midnight. I managed to get myself a hot drink at the station and did read a few chapters of Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff. Seriously, what an ending to a series that just got better and better as the books went on. And the last book, Dark Dawn, broke me. I will talk about that at some point. I have to be honest, when it comes to my short review, I really struggled to think of a book to talk about this week. Most of the ones that I've read recently deserve a whole episode of their own. While I've been adjusting to a new job, I haven't read as much as I would have done in previous weeks. And of the books I read back in November, many were previews that I have reserved for next year for reasons that I will go into in my next episode, because I've got a lot of news. So I guess I need to look back at October and pick a book from that list, which wasn't quite as extensive as September, but still pretty impressive. I was a massive fan of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It made me cry, it made me laugh, and it left me considering whether I would willingly pay the same price she did for a chance at immortality. I guess that's why A Short Walk Through a Wide World by Douglas Westerbeke really called to me. With a tagline that actually states, "For fans of Addie LaRue," it was a book that was targeted at me and kept on appearing in my "if you like that, you'll like this" when I was buying stuff on Amazon and Waterstones. I added this book to my 10 before the end back in October, and it was the first one that I picked off the shelf once I got close to ending my 25 books for 2025. A challenge that I have decided I will not be picking up again next year. A Short Walk Through a Wide World does pay something of an homage to Schwab's finest book. At least, in my opinion, it's her finest. But anyway, everyone has their own views. The story of Aubrey Torval, who, due to a curse, is unable to stay in one place for any length of time, or she will die. Quite simply, she is forced, from a very young age, to wander the earth, never settling anywhere. Unlike Addie LaRue, Aubrey's story precedes her. People know who she is, people seek her out and try to cure her of the infliction that led to her eternal travels. Never able to spend time with her family or revisit any place she has already seen, her life is lived in isolation, at least to a degree. My heart bled for Aubrey and for her family who were unable to help her. They had to let her walk away in order for her to live. While Addie LaRue is cursed to never be remembered, Aubrey's curse is to never be forgotten, because she leaves an indelible mark on those who meet her. She has saved lives, witnessed incredible things, but she can never stay. She has fallen in love, been loved, and while many have travelled with her, the endurance she displays is not something they can mirror. I did enjoy the book, but at the back of my mind, the memory of Addie LaRue and the story which broke my heart, that of her and Henry, was always hovering. Aubrey's story is tragic, but the fact that these people she met and connected with, had they loved her enough, could potentially have followed her, it frustrated me. She is a strong memory for the people whose lives she has changed, rather than a wisp of nothing that is gone before a corner has been turned. There were moments when I found her a frustrating character. It felt as though the story could be a metaphor. Someone who has a difficult life, or the life they didn't want, escapes by running away and never returning to the place where everything happened. The fact that Aubrey was incredibly young and didn't want to settle for the life she had is irrelevant. Some elements of the book really packed a punch, while others felt somewhat confused and lacking in purpose. Overall, A Short Walk Through a Wide World was an interesting read, but it isn't one that I will be revisiting. It's an interesting concept that didn't quite stick the landing. Next year is looking like it's going to be an incredible one for the podcast. Not only because some amazing books are coming out over the course of the 12 months, but also because I have some fantastic interviews lined up that I cannot wait to share with you. And I will trickle them out because some of them are amazing. Seriously, I can't even believe them myself. 2025 has been a brilliant year, which I will go into in far more detail in my summary of the year in my final episode of 2025. I've spoken with wonderful and talented authors, read some spectacular books, many of which are still living rent-free in my head, and I have discovered some unbelievable new authors. Some of them are new to me, and some of them are just genuinely debut authors that released their first book in the year. I know I've said it before, but 2025 started as the year of the hyped up book. And it seems that 2026 is going to follow closely in its footsteps, with quite a few new and highly anticipated novels already receiving great exposure. I know that I have already pre-ordered several of them, including the sequels to Shield of Sparrows, Direbound, Silver Elite, Brimstone, and the book that I am seriously most anticipating, the sequel to The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, which the moment they announced it, it was like, I'm going to order that. And then I had to cancel my order because they announced a special release. But that's me, because I love my special editions. I guess what I'm saying here is that though it's terrifying to think that 2025 is almost over, there is still a great deal to look forward to. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much to everyone who's listening and who has listened since the beginning or has started listening this year. If you're enjoying the show, why not share it with your friends or family? And please leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever podcatcher you listen on. It really does help the show reach a new audience. You can find me on Instagram at BeingBookishPod, on X at being_bookish, and on TikTok, where I will be posting again. I've just been so busy at Being Bookish Reviews. Prefer reading? Head to beingbookish.co.uk for spoiler-free reviews, my 2025 reading tracker, and all the links to the podcast and where you can listen to it in one place. Until next time, this is me saying farewell.